are created equal, right? That's one of the founding principles of this great republic. And we like to think that that was true for all people. However, when we think about what happens with property, as an example, what we realize or what we recognize is that money oftentimes provides access that all people don't get a chance to operate or reconcile. So money is important. So what is the color of money? This exhibit talks about the color of money, so to speak. And so although we are all created equal, how we get treated in this society can be very different based upon our race or our ethnic group. What we know is that redlining is one example of how we get treated differently, even though we're all created equal, right? So redlining was a practice of the Federal Housing Administration to carve out high-risk loan areas for black or mixed communities. And so those got high-risk loans, and the green areas got low-risk loans. And that this redlining was really designed to carve out places where blacks and other minorities would be relegated to live. And the majority of the housing stock in the United States was, particularly in the early part, so the 1920s, 30s, was really relegated. The housing stock for African Americans or minorities was really housing projects, right? Renting in these areas. And so what we know about renting is that you don't get equity through renting, right? And so people with really good jobs are paying in rent in places where they're not gaining equity. Detroit was a great example of that. So the Ford manufacturing plant was doing some equitable things by paying blacks the same amount that they were paying whites, and people were able to get some upward mobility. Simultaneously, the housing stock in those areas oftentimes were difficult for African Americans to gain a foothold in. So we know that redlining has been a problem. And what we also must recognize is that that's not just a past example, but that is a current thing today. That redlining, the results of redlining still happen today. Look in any community where there is an immigrant community, I would suggest to you that they are following the same patterns that other so-called minority groups have also followed. So I know that in Minneapolis, for example, the Cedar Riverside neighborhood has been a place where low-income folks could come in and establish a life and grow, and that immigrant population keeps rolling and rotating, right? So there is that. What we also recognize is that there are institutions that have also been supportive of some of these redlining tactics. And we also recognize that public schools are funded partly through property taxes. And I would say a majority of property taxes, which is why they want they seek to pass levies and whatnot on property taxes. And so if you have a community that has low valued homes, then the property tax will also be affected by that. And so when we have communities that are majority in poverty or low income, what we end up with is also schools that reflect what the community looks like. And so when we talk about race has an economic impact on how people operate within the United States. So although race is not a biological or scientific designation, so race may not be necessarily real, but racism and the impacts of race are certainly real.